Well, thank you so much for taking time out of your Friday. It's very much appreciated.
Thank you.
I caught the film the other day, quite enjoyed it. I very much like that, it's very female led.
Yes.
What I like that there is characters in it, male characters in it even, but they're very much sort of to the side. They're almost the supporting, which is
and also I think what's really great is that the female led characters are strong. They're not weak, which I think is quite refreshing, isn't it? I definitely think the film industry is moving towards that now after all the Me Too movements, and I do think it's had quite a prolific effect in how we see women on camera. I think people are becoming much more conscious about it, which is really important.
Yeah, I mean, you co-founded Buffalo Dragon. I think it was in June 2020. What was it that prompted that decision to step into this new world?
Oh, apart from the fact the world was in lockdown and there was no theatres or any sign of any acting coming up, I suppose it was quite a natural progression. I still love acting and I still do act. I'm just much more selective about what I do because obviously Buffalo takes up a lot of my time. But I think when the pandemic hit, I don't think any of us could have realised we'd still be talking about it 2 years later. And I'd produced a play prior to the pandemic, which the writer actually went on to be nominated for an Olivier. So we must have been doing something right. I remember doing a play at the Charing Cross Theatre and standing backstage, and it was becoming a bit of a patter with me. I was looking at things in a very different way and thinking about how it could be improved and what I would do. And I suppose wanting to take control of my own destiny a little bit more. And I think producing allows me to do that. It allows me to be responsible for the journey that the projects take instead of just waiting at home for the phone to ring, which I think any actor will tell you is really, really hard work, particularly for somebody who has a personality like I do and a work ethic. I just like to be busy and creating and evolving. And I'd also started writing program ideas, and Greg, who's my business partner, hounded me, although he'll tell you a very different story, by the way, Kat. He stalked me for 18 months, whereas he thinks I stalked him. And he was saying, why don't you put these ideas into your own company? Why are you taking them to other people? And I said, well, I don't really want to run a company. I'm a creative. And I remember standing at my kitchen window thinking, when we were all in lockdown and it was a really hot day, thinking, well, nothing's going to happen for a long, long time. And he said, let's do it. I gave him the weekend to think about it. And on Monday thought, yes, let's do it. This is amazing. What am I waiting for?
And what was it about Stranger in Our Bed that sort of stood out to you as one of the things that you wanted to use, to create first for this new company?
Well, I knew psychological thrillers are genres that are popular. And I also wanted to find something where it was female-led, the females were really strong. And I actually sent a couple of messages out on social media privately to people that I knew. And Fraser Hines, who people will probably more know from Emmerdale, he just came back to me and said, actually, I do know somebody, because I was specifically looking for a psychological thriller. And he said, a friend of mine's a writer, and he put me in touch with Samantha Lee Howe, who launched the book in that year, actually, earlier in that year. And it was a US Today best-selling book. And when you're going into production with a film, or you're thinking about packaging a film, it's difficult at independent level, and more so now after the pandemic. So you need any extra thing around it that you can, and that had existing IP with the book already being out there. So it made sense on lots of levels, and I loved the book and thought it would make a great film.
I mean, you must have been quite lucky with it being a new book. I mean, a lot of times, these, books and things, as soon as they come onto the market, people have snapped them up. So you must have managed to sort of sneak in there quite early.
Yeah, it's interesting, isn't it? Because, and I don't know how true this is, but you are right, they do get snapped up, but sadly not always to go into production. Sometimes if some of the bigger studios, and I will stand corrected if a studio wants to answer this, but if they've got a film coming out that's a particular genre, sometimes they go and buy up the competitor rights to try and protect their own film. So some of these rights end up sitting on a shelf, and I think that's probably why Sam was quite keen to work with us, because she knew that our intention was always to make it really quickly. I'm not sure they realised it would be quite as quick, but you know, we did what we said we would do. We optioned it, and we were on set 10 weeks later filming it.
Wow, that is very fast. I mean, you know, you said before that, you know, you do still act, and in this you play Becky. Was there any temptation to play any of the other female parts, or, you know, what was it about Becky that sort of made you go, no, this is who I'm comfortable being?
I am never ever going to be a producer that puts myself in a role because it's the lead, or I would only ever do things that I think that I could do well. And I would also only do it if the director was on board with it, because I'm just not, I want what's best for the film. But actually, when Sam was doing the screenplay, every time she was saying, I'm writing Becky with you in mind, I'm writing Becky with you in mind. So I think by the time we had the screenplay, Sam was like, well, you're playing Becky, aren't you? I was like, yeah, okay. But it is really hard being the kind of producer that I am, in that I'm on the ground and then acting as well. It's just making sure that you don't compromise one or the other. I would never, I think I'd find it really difficult being the lead and producing as well. I think it's okay if you're the lead and you're probably not such an active producer, but your job as a producer, you are constantly doing and fighting and fixing, and, you know, all day long. I mean, it's not 12 hours, it's 21 hours. And so a couple of times actually with Becky, we were supposed to shoot some of our scenes at the Manor House, and I was just like, we're going to have to move them. I can't possibly do it together. My head's not in it. And I suppose that's the only benefit, you know. And I just didn't want to compromise Becky either, so we moved it to further along in the shoot. So I really liked her. She's strong. She's ballsy. Always a copper's daughter. I quite like the investigative side to her. Didn't quite like being a brunette, but.
So we've been joined by a friend for the next thing of questions. She always has to make an appearance. She's desperate to go viral, bless her. I mean, I did media production at uni, and we made some short films in our final year, and I always took on that role of producer. So my hat off to you to be able to sort of manage producing and also do the acting and, you know, the home side of everything as well, because you're right, it is all consuming.
Oh, well, you can't think of anything else. As soon as you get green lit until delivery, I mean, post-production's a little bit easier because you are waiting on certain elements to be done, so there's a bit of breathing space. But I think for any film to actually get into production, any independent film, is nothing short of a miracle. I think sometimes it really saddens me when people who haven't been on this journey are really quick and easy to judge a project or a film, you know, not specifically Stranger, although I'm sure we'll have our share of bad reviews because every film does, but it would be really nice if people just had a bit of understanding about the blood, pain and sweat that people have got to try and bring you that entertainment. You know, does it stack up against a studio film? Of course not, we don't have that kind of money, but it just would be good for people to understand how difficult filmmaking industry is, and it's not all the glamour and glitz of the red carpet, and that's actually a 5-minute section of it. The bit that comes before all of that, for the actors, for all the crew, the long hours. I mean, the Manor House, the poor crew were out at midnight in the rain. It was freezing. It was horrible. I just think sometimes there's not a very realistic view of our industry.
Yeah, no, I agree. And like I say, we did 2 short films. One of them we shot in Spain, and we were a student budget, you know, that was like out of our
Wow.
we had a very determined director who went on to the London Film and Television School, so we were motivated. We filmed one in November on a motorway service station, and also like on an overpass at like 3 a.m. So I'm there with you with the cold nights and that. So I think as somebody that writes about film, I do have that sort of little insight, and, you know, it is a miracle that these things get made. And, you know, the fact that, you know, you made this in such a short turnaround during, you know, a global pandemic, you know, is just, you know, it's just incredible.
Yeah, we could talk about the perils of indie film. I mean, I think it's only going to get worse because there's such a a need now for streamers building their own content, that, you know, crews' wages have tripled, and there's lots of articles at the moment for people that are interested about the difficulty that face independent producers raising finance.
Yeah, definitely. And the film was filmed at the height of the pandemic. I think a key to the production was finding your manor house. You know, how did you uncover it?
It wasn't easy, actually, because as you've just said, we were in lockdown, and so a lot of people didn't really want to take bookings. The good thing is about this, we were all self-contained, we were working, we had COVID protocol, and I just did a lot of surfing of the net, as we do as producers. We just kind of went to location agencies, we looked online, and eventually we found this beautiful manor house in Northampton. But it didn't come without its difficulties during that time, because although in some ways it was great because we got amazing crew, because people wanted to work, a lot of the services were not working. And that was very difficult, putting the shoot together and not having normal caterers, or not having the props houses all open, or not having vehicles in abundance like we normally do to hire, because the whole country was in lockdown. So in some ways it was amazing, and in other ways it was really horrendous.
I think I'm right in saying that, you know, you actually used the manor house more than you probably would have done outside of that, because it actually doubled up for several other locations. You know, do you think that in an open world environment you would have stuck with repurposing?
Do you know, I think it was a really great use of the manor house, and actually so much so we did it on our second film, which we're just coming out of post with. So with the manor house, we used the manor house as locations, but then there were some outhouses that we turned into other sets, so we kind of used it like a studio. And the second film, Through Buffalo Dragon, we were having real trouble finding studio space, because of course it's just absolutely exploded. So we ended up going to a farm and using their barns and turned that into a studio. So I think there's thinking outside the box, I think at our level of production is imperative. And I would definitely do it again, because actually it was really lovely to be on a farm, and I think you get a different kind of energy from people that aren't used to having film crews there. And I think sometimes that's really nice.
I mean, going back to the film itself, why should audiences sort of take the chance on this little indie film of yours?
Oh, that's a really good question. I think it's really interesting that, and particularly in social media, we've got face brag, haven't we? And the way that people, and I'm not criticizing people, because I do it myself. If I have a great night out, I put a lovely picture with all my friends on Facebook. Well, what I don't possibly think about is people not having such a great night and then seeing those photos. So I think the element of seemingly looking at somebody's life and thinking on the outside how amazing it looks, when actually you scratch below the surface and you realize it's not amazing at all, and actually there's all sorts going on. And I think in the current climate, a lot of people can probably find a bit of comfort in that, in the fact that don't worry about this fabulous litter of lives you're seeing on Facebook or Twitter or Instagram, because actually you're only seeing the very best of people, aren't you? And scratching beneath the surface is probably not that much different than some of the trials and tribulations that one might be having themselves. I think it's a great escapism for an hour and a half. I think it's girls doing what they do, sticking together, and in doing so, you know, possibly, I don't want to give any spoilers, possibly defeating the bad guys. So I just think it's a really good hour and a half of twists and turns and psychological thriller. And I think the last half an hour for me is the best part of the film.
Yeah. And what's next for the company? What's next for yourself?
So we've just, as I mentioned before, we have just coming out of post with a film called Bowl and Shoes, starring Timothy Spall and Leanne Best, with a backdrop of T-Rex and Mark Bolan, which is really exciting and very, very different to Stranger in Our Bed. We have 3 other films that we're out to finance, and a slate of TV projects that are all with various channels. So we are hustling at Buffalo Dragon. Watch this space.
Yeah, busy, busy, busy. Well, I wish you the best of luck with this film when it releases.
Thank you, Kat. Lovely to speak to you.